evening. How are we all doing? And yes, happy Easter, everybody. I've already eaten a couple of chocolate eggs already. It's I don't normally early, but this year for some reason I've just been like, I've got one, so I'll eat it. Yeah, I did already have one, but now I don't anymore, and I feel ashamed of myself, but it was nice. So tonight we will be working on the NPC skills for the sensors, because a lot of the sensors actions are scripted rather than persistent actions. So what we're going to do is go through the radial menu commands that we have and make sure that when you select something from the radial menu, it raises that as an actual task and tracks it in the system rather than the NPC just following a script and actually doing something, because the latter is not resilient and it's prone to being messed up if you press buttons. Plus we need to track what NPCs are doing. So we need to make sure that we equip the NPCs with a skill set, so they have different abilities that they can perform, and then we need to make sure those abilities are called when needed. So I think on the helm we are generally in a good place with that. I don't think there's anything we're asking of the helm that's not getting raised as a task. So we just need to make sure that the sensors is the same. That aside, I think we're pretty much done with the whole orders and command and all that stuff. I think the next step in the evolution of that is going to be making sure that we can raise tasks for players when the player is sat in the chair. So again, it just adds that to the system for players to do something with, and also start adding the NPC captain. So we've got logic running from a captain, which again you can sit there as the player on either the helm and sensors, and then that captain's telling you what to do. And I think once we're done with that, then aside from getting the build out to the public on the public demo, we'll then probably move straight into doing comms and having orders and things being raised from Earth. I think Easter's this Sunday, isn't it? Pretty sure it's this Sunday. Oh, something I did off stream. Before we had it so that the color of the radial menu was based on your role, and right now it's just generic if you're not looking at anything. I will change this so it's your role color, but if you're looking at a specific station, then it will inherit the color of that station. So you've got brown for deck crew, blue for science, so both of those are blue. Over on tactical, you've got red for tactical, and you've got the orange for engineering, yellow for command, and over on this side you've got a bit of a mix, so you've got tactical on one side and deck crew on the other. So we'll have that pretty consistently everywhere. And I also just want to make sure that these chairs are, yeah, they're grey now. These were coming up brown earlier, but they are now nice and generic. Yeah, and they should just say office chair now rather than just chair. Okay, good. Yes, you should be able to... Oh, no, you can't. Yeah, I say that. They're probably not flagged for it. I think I turned that off for a reason, because once you summon an NPC captain, they immediately start trying to do stuff. So I think I disabled that for that reason. I will go through that after we're done with the sensors, though. So let's just make sure that everything we've got here is raising a task. So we've got engage the FTL, and I don't think that raises a task. Let me just double check. Oh, it does. Okay. And they're not actually doing anything, so we'll make sure that that is hooked up. And I suppose we could do with engage Autopilot as well, or maybe we'll call that one prepare to FTL or something like that, or prepare to depart, because we need to make sure that every possibility is catered for in the most efficient way possible. And there's only, to be honest, two things that the NPC can do. Either they're engaging the autopilot or they're engaging the FTL. They're not really doing anything else. Let's just check that one, make sure that is raising. I'm guessing, yeah, we're already home, so the order comes up and then immediately disappears because we're already there. Okay, so we need to fix that, add the prepare to depart. Yeah, release parking brake. But this one, so let's imagine a situation where you've either got an NPC captain or a player captain, and they have selected long range because they want to see the long range sensors. Now right now that's not creating an order on the system, so I can go between all these different modes and it's not creating anything for the NPC to follow. They are just immediately acting on that order without it being tracked in any way. So what we want from this is that if the NPC captain wants to see the long range sensors, then they would do the equivalent of clicking this on whoever sat in that chair. So when they do that, we should then have a task raised on here to bring up the long range sensors, so that if a player is sat in the chair, they'll have something that they can action, as opposed to receiving some kind of a notice that they might not see. And also we can potentially make it so that even if there's no one in the chair, we can still raise that task for that station, so that if someone just happens to get out the chair, when they go to sit down, that task is waiting for them, as opposed to not being there. Because if we get rid of the NPC, we don't have the ability to do anything now. So I think we need to make sure that we bring that back, so that we can always raise a task on there, so that there's always something there if needed. So it's just a bit of a polish on how we're doing this, because we want to get to the point where it doesn't matter if there's an NPC, captain, helmsman, or sensor specialist, or a player, one of those three. There should be any combination of player or NPC, and it should just work just the same regardless of who's sitting where and whether it's manned or not. So we just need to make sure that that is indeed the case. I just noticed we are actually on the main map, so let's switch across to the test map so that we are loading more quickly. So again, just as a reminder, the NPCs basically go with a logic graph like this, where they check to see if there are any tasks that are relevant for them. If not, they do nothing. If there's a pending task, they'll assign it to themselves. And I'm thinking of maybe skipping this, because having the task assigned seems a little bit redundant. Because the priority list is top down, so whatever's at the top, it's currently being actioned. So we don't necessarily need to assign it. So we could just have, is there a task, basically. So yes, if we do have a task, then we then need to work out what that task is. So the way this is split is, these are actions that the NPC needs to perform, and essentially these subgraphs, these are the skill, the logic behind that action. So this is us teaching the NPC how to actually do that. So we need that for all of these. So like here, engage FTL, we don't have anything. So quite simply, we can probably steal something from here. Let's just grab all that a minute, because we can actually just, even better, let's just duplicate it, because we can just rejig a bit of that. But with these things being separate actions with associated logic, it means we can call upon these actions separately and arbitrarily whenever we need to. So if there's a string of actions that need to be performed, then we can queue these up to perform a certain set of tasks in order, or in the order that we want them completed. I'll need to double check that that is indeed the ID code that we're using for that action. But quite simply, if we are at sublight, and these are the steps that the ship goes through. So we're either engaging warp, we're at warp, or we're disengaging, and then we're at sublight. So the ship goes through these different states as you go in and out of warp. So if we are at sublight, then it is then appropriate to be able to press that button. So if we're not, then the NPC will essentially skip doing anything until we're at such a time when that becomes a relevant thing to do, so that the task will basically sit there unactioned until we're already in the right position in the ship to be able to perform that action. Although saying that, I'm just wondering whether or not whether we need to skip this if we're already at warp, because obviously we are well, I suppose we can clear that out from the task manager, because the task manager is going to be doing the completion objective checking for all of these tasks. So the way I've got this split on the code and the logic is the task manager generates the tasks and decides where to route those tasks. So basically it's our task router, but it's also our objective tracker as well. So it knows it knows when that task has been completed. So all the NPC is doing is just performing the actions to complete that task. It doesn't check to see whether that task is complete at all. It just goes through and does its job. So we've got that kind of split between managing it and actioning it. So that should technically be all we need to do. So we just need to make sure we're tracking that now on the task manager. So engage FTL. Yeah, so what we were doing is we were waiting to see whether or not the button has been pressed. But I think what we'll do instead is, rather than waiting for a button press, we will actually check the ship state itself. And that's a little bit more robust. So we know the task is to engage the FTL drive, so we know that that task has been completed if the ship is currently at warp. Now, if it's already at warp, then we don't need to press the button anyway. So either way, that signifies that that has actually been successfully achieved. Yeah, then we need to know which thing we are cancelling out. So yeah, so that's the array. So we will remove the index like that, and then just collapse that down. Oh, and of course we need to make sure that we, having done that, we just broadcast out the fact that there's been a change to the helm orders so that the UIs can be updated. Just tidy that up. Right, so if we're at warp, if that's true, we remove that index, which we're grabbing from there, and yeah, that just updates the UIs. Okay. Where's our event graph gone? Okay, so when we create the order from the Radial menu, it goes through this process and it will create helm orders here, and it will just go through and generate those orders. We don't need that anymore. That's just checking those flags to make sure the button's been pressed. So that stores the order on the system, and then once that's on there, we can then do our completion checking. So that's the two sides of the task manager, and then this is the action side on the NPC. So that should be all the things we need in order for that to be trackable. So no orders there currently. We're not currently at FTL. So if we do engage FTL drive, we can see an order is there, and as soon as it's engaged, the order disappears. Okay, so I'll disengage again. So if we get rid of the NPC, so now there's no one sat in the chair. So of course, yeah, now I can't actually raise that order. If I can just do that a minute. Great, so I got in there quick enough so that we've raised the order on the system. And obviously there's no NPC there now, so nothing's happening. So if I go ahead and press that as the player, then that should satisfy that that order has been completed. Like so. Great, so it is working for both the player and the NPC alike. Yeah, so we definitely need the orders on there at all times, I think, regardless of who is in the chair or why. Yes, and Anasi, basically, because the idea is we want to build up a skill set for all the NPCs. So what we're doing is basically we're teaching those NPCs how to perform certain tasks on the bridge. So when we raise an order, or if as the captain we need something doing, we need to make sure we provide those NPCs with the required logic in order to be able to complete that task. So we're kind of just teaching them as we go. So every time we need a new action, we then have to teach them how to perform that action, and make sure that the back end is tracking those actions as well, in order to ensure that they are successfully completed. So the other thing we wanted is the whole engage autopilot thing, and what we'll do, I think, we will set that up as preparing to depart rather than engaging autopilot, because from a roleplay perspective, it gives you that whole thing where you can do, prepare to go to warp, autopilot's engaged, it points the ship at the destination but doesn't actually go anywhere until you say, right, engage the FTL drive, and then the ship will leave. So it gives you that kind of captain's movement. So if we are well, I guess it doesn't matter actually whether or not, doesn't matter if we're at warp or not, that's irrelevant. We will use our incorrectly named boolean instead. I still haven't named this to autopilot, so this is actually tracking whether the autopilot's on, it's just named wrongly. So if the autopilot is not already on, then engage the autopilot, otherwise do nothing. So similar to the FTL one. Let's make sure it's on the right channel. Okay, so that's all the logic that the NPC needs. It's very simple in this instance. And then on the task manager, we of course then need the objective tracking aspect of that. So we'll get rid of that. Pop that in there. Make sure we have the right order ID. Right, so we don't want that one, we want that one. So because we are essentially checking to see whether or not the autopilot is engaged already, if the order is raised and autopilot is already engaged, then it will just immediately close the order because the thing that it's looking for is already done. And that should be it, to be honest. I think what we'll do... Yeah, we'll need to make sure that the radial menu has both engage and disengage options, because we want to be able to turn those things on and off. Although, do we need disengage autopilot? I guess not, because we've got all stop, and all stop will do that anyway. So yeah, no, we're fine. We don't need that. Okay, let's get our chair master. Hey Cole, good to see you. Yeah, you're not wrong, Danger Mouse. I'm not sure what mine would be. I think you're right. It probably would be something like off we go then. Yes, I have an array of drinks tonight, so I've already finished my Lucasade. Now I'm on my leftovers of fizzy water. Then I have another fizzy water, so see if I get through it all. Yeah, you're probably right, Max. I'm sure there's probably some scenario when we will need that. But for now, I think we are good. Right. What am I looking for? I think I'm looking for that one. So we've got this logic going on here, where we're deciding whether or not to include things like sitting down or summoning an NPC. We kind of need to change this a bit so that we add summon NPC in addition to what's going on here. And we make sure that we have the station options always there, regardless of what the logic is here. So essentially this needs trashing a little bit. It did, Danger Mouse, it did. Yeah, I don't know whether real world captains have a go word. I'm thinking this logic is probably not even needed, to be fair. Because we can likely append. Because if we clear the menu there, and then if we work out whether or not we have sit down or summon NPC, obviously if you can't summon an NPC, then none of that is relevant either. Okay. Okay, so I think this side is fine. So if we can't spawn an NPC in that chair, and that just basically means, is it a bridge station? And if it's not occupied, then sitting down is the only valid response. And if it is occupied, we will add a request chair option here at some point. So it will ask whoever sat in the chair to get out and optionally give them that choice. So, but this logic kind of needs moving up there. And then we don't care necessarily whether there's an NPC active or not. So we don't want to do that. We want to add instead okay, so if we don't have an NPC in the chair, then we need the ability to sit down. And we also need the ability to summon an NPC into the chair. So those kind of, they both go together. So NPC active is false. Sit down. Sit down or summon. So we need them both. So actually let's do this instead. Let's sequence that because both of these will be needed whenever that is false. So if there is an active NPC, then we don't want the sit down option or summon. We want dismiss NPC instead. Which I guess we're adding on here. Yeah. So I guess you want to remove it from there. Put it there. And I guess that then so it's working out which order to do this in. So if it can spawn an NPC, then the first thing we're checking is the NPC active? If they are, then we need the ability to get a shot of them. And if they're not active, then we need to do sit down or summon. So I suppose that needs to be a sequence as well then. So that will always be the follow-up options because the first things on the menu are going to be either dismiss the NPC or sit or summon. So they'll be the first things, and then regardless of those we'll always include the bridge station options if an NPC is spawnable in that chair. Otherwise, we'll just give the player the option to sit down. So that should cater for that. Yeah, and then I suppose rather than going through that, we will just pop that in there instead and get rid of that. Assuming these are all just adding. So we don't need that or them. And that doesn't need that. Let's just move that over there, just keep it tidy. Okay, so basically that's not even needed now, and we don't need an output pin, so that becomes nothing. Obviously the helm has a bunch of stuff going on, so we're just adding to level 0 menu. We don't want dismiss NPC because we've already got that covered. And we don't need output. Okay, same with the sensors. Don't need an output. Just need to make sure that we're adding our menu options. To also make sure that we're adding and not setting that array so we don't break it. So this should just be the 4 different modes. So that's all the level 1s, then the level 0. Same there, so level 1s followed by the level 0. Okay, and then we don't need those. And then basically all of the others don't actually need anything. Because none of these have actually got any logic associated with them yet. So comms empty, tactical, empty. Might as well tidy them up while I'm here. These are the foundations basically for what will be coming to the other stations when we start making them. So that was the captain's chair, Exo's chair, making sure we're not getting additional options when we don't need them. So these ones are the generic actions, which are the same for all of the chairs, whereas these ones are bridge station specific stuff. So we tack those on after we've done the generic ones. So if there's an NPC, the very first thing you'll get to do is dismiss that NPC. If not, you can either choose to sit down or summon an NPC. And then regardless of whether it's a player or an NPC, we will then have those options there available. Which means, if we now test this, we should be able to raise an order for an unoccupied chair so that the next person to sit in it can go ahead and action that order. Okay, so dismiss NPC, and yeah, that's the only valid options we have right now. We'll add prepare to depart as one of them as well. So if we get rid of the NPC, oops, and don't sit down. So we now have sit down and summon NPC as the two options, but we still also have our tasks as well. So if we hit engage FTL drive, then that should have created an order there, which is exactly what we want. So if I was to now summon an NPC, they would go ahead and action the pending order, as would a player if they were to sit in the chair. So if I just go ahead, oh, no, not me. If we, of course. Right, so right now, left click is always the default option. So left clicking sits me down, which is fine, that's what I expect to happen. But if I'm holding down E to unlock the mouse and I click the chair, it is treating that as the default action. And I think what we would prefer is, obviously when you press F, you get the menu up. And I think if you're holding E when you click the chair, it should bring up the menu rather than doing the default action. Because I don't think you would hold down E unless you were expecting the menu to come up. So we'll change that. But yeah, so if I now summon an NPC, that NPC should go ahead and immediately action the pending task. Yep, there we go. Okay, so that's perfect, actually. It's exactly what we want. So we're now in a position whereby it doesn't matter who's sat in the chair. You can raise orders regardless, even if the chair is empty, and then the next person to sit in it can then take care of the backed up orders that are pending on the UI. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, actually. So let's just add that one last helm order, which was to engage Autopilot. So if we squeeze that in there. Yeah, I guess actually we need some logic there. So if we get ship state and then check Autopilot, like I'm in two minds about these. So we've got obviously the option to use the sensor target and to use the command target. Now, what you could do if you were going through kind of the full roleplay experience, you could get the helm to use your current command target and then prepare to depart. In which case they're performing two actions. If you just click prepare to depart, then it's not actually targeting anything. So I suppose in that regard we do need these as valid orders, just so you've got the full breadth of possibilities on the helm. I mean, it is a bit micromanagey, because, you know, obviously you do have the option just to say navigate to my target and it will do all of that for you. But if you want to do it granularly, I suppose we do need to make that an option. Let's see how we are for a space on the radial menu. I suppose we're going to need room to include all that. So we've got use command target, and we've got use sensor target, and then we have prepare to depart. And I'll check the action ID on that one. Potentially, yes. Although, yeah, this is specifically a helm thing. I'm just thinking in terms of something that's more descriptive than engage autopilot, because well, I guess this is only temporary as well, because at some point we'll have things like heading hold, approach distance, approach speed, and a very sort of granular approach to how the autopilot works, and we'll have things like prograde, retrograde, nadir and zenith, and all the different directions that the ship can point in. So we're going to need an autopilot category with all the different options therein. But for now, we could just do prepare to depart rather than it saying engage autopilot, because it's just a little bit more role-player-y. But prepare to depart is irrelevant unless you first set a target. And right now we don't have the ability to set, just press the button, essentially. Unless it's part of a larger thing. So I suppose for both of these, I need to make sure, get command target. You just make sure that there actually is a command target. So if has target is true, because we don't want to include the option to use it if we don't have one set. So that just takes care of that. This is a slightly more awkward one. So get sensors data. Yeah, so this one, we don't have the same struct that we're using here. So on this one we have our new struct, which basically has a bunch of details for the target itself, and a flag to see whether or not we do have one set. We can't rely on zeroed out values, because zeroed out values are in fact a location, so we have to rely on a boolean for that. We don't have that available in the sensors, so what I actually need to do is I need to go through and update the send to helm button on the sensors so that it's using this struct rather than this one, because then we'll have the same flag as to whether or not we have a target, and then we can just drive that nice and simply through a branch to determine whether or not we include this option. But in the absence of that, I think instead I'm just going to go with does not equal Saj. Now the only time this is going to cause a problem is if you are specifically trying to target Saj. But that's a fairly rare occurrence, so that can be our placeholder solution for now, which is a bodge, but we'll use that until such a time as we've updated the struct to this one, and then we don't need to just check for the zeros, because that is the default value for that. Okay, so that takes care of whether or not to include them, and then we need to make sure we have the right action code being called there, which would be on our player controller. If I can find it, there it is. Okay, so that's nice and straightforward. So that one's just helm autopilot, and again we'll only include that if we're not already enabled on the autopilot, and then those two would be use command target and use sensor target. I suppose I better include those just to make sure we're not doing anything that we don't need to do. Just see what that looks like. We have a a cap of 8 individual options on any given radial menu ring, so we just need to make sure that we're not overloading that with too much stuff. Okay, that's nice. So there's very little on there. So obviously it's not showing use command target or use sensor target because we don't have one set in either instance. Prepare to depart is on there because we're not actually using the autopilot. So if I turn on the autopilot, then prepare to depart is now gone from the menu because it's already on, so we don't need that. And if I turn that off again, then it's back, so that's working. If we pick that one as a center helm target, and then we pick that one as our command target, then now we've got a lot more stuff on here because there's more going on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, actually, that's the maximum. So that is everything. So now we've got the option to use those targets because we've just set them. And we've got our enable autopilot button there. We've got our engage button down there. That's our generic take us back home to Earth button. And then again, because we have those 2 targets set, it's also given us the ability to navigate to them directly. So these 2 options here encompass these or all of these. So navigate to sensor target will involve using it, engaging the autopilot and engaging the FTL. So it does all 3 of those things when you press this button. So that's kind of a shortcut really. But if you want the roleplay aspect of calling out these commands individually, then you can do it in a more granular way. But yeah, that is hitting our limit now of how many things we can have on the menu. So we can't add anything else without putting it in folders. And we'll do a similar thing for this one. But okay, so we just need to go through each of these and make sure that they are actually all raising the actual proper orders on here. So you can see there, use command target has been raised, but there won't be a corresponding skill that the NPC knows. If we also do use sensor target, so with both of those are being raised and tracked, but obviously we're not actually doing anything because the NPC doesn't know what to do. So we just need to teach them that. The other thing I might do is if the current nav target is already equal to, say, the sensor target, then it will remove the option from the menu because it's no longer relevant. So the target is that. If they were to change the target to something else, then it would come back because at that point it's then relevant. To be honest, whilst this menu's open, we could even update it like once per second, so that if the person at the helm were to press a button and change the target, then that option would appear immediately on the menu to set it back again. But that's just polish really. We can come back and add that afterwards. Okay, so that's being raised successfully there. That's being raised successfully there. Those 2 already work. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I suppose. Yeah, so all stop will replace engage FTL anyway. Actually, that's because it just occurred to me that cancel orders would be a 9th option. Not easily, Illusion, no, because if you're in a star system, then you're never going to have more than 30 odd objects, and we already do track that in its own struct. But if you're not in a star system, then the targets are star systems themselves, and that could be upwards of 3,000 or 4,000 normally, which is a big old struct. Okay, so target that one there, that one there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I didn't press button. That gives us our 8. Okay, so if I now, I guess, do use sensor target, it should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so 9 on there now. It's interesting. I thought it capped at 8, so it's nice to know that it will fit. Perhaps we're okay then. I wouldn't want to squeeze any more than that on there though, because it's already getting a bit cluttered. Yeah, so if we cancel that, then that's back down to 8 again. Okay, and then we need to make sure that we clear those off if they are indeed set. Very true, Anasi, yes, very true. I'd say at least 3 times as many objects. I'd say at least. So yeah, you're probably looking at least 100 objects per star system, including moons. Probably more. I mean, how many moons does Jupiter have? Isn't it something stupid like 100 odd? How many moons does Jupiter have? 95 as of 2026. Yeah, so Jupiter has 95 moons. That's mad. And that's just one planet. So if we were to include all of Jupiter's moons in the data, which of course I'd like to, I don't see any reason not to, then we'd have to do similar for other gas giants of that size. I doubt Jupiter is in any way unique in the galaxy, so large gas giants probably just naturally have a lot of moons because they're so big and capture a lot of stuff. So it's probably going to be the norm rather than the exception. So yes, you're looking at a lot of data, but we can probably manage that through nesting. So as much as the struct will be large in the sense of the data, if we have nested arrays, then all the child objects of, say, Jupiter, or indeed Saturn, are held in a separate array. So if we're looping through to draw those, then obviously we're only checking the ones that are in range. So we can minimize the amount of looping that we're doing in that regard. Not enough room for that one, sadly, Delta. Right. So we know we're raising them. So we just need to make sure now we are tracking them. I'm just questioning the logic of doing this via action IDs, because on here, when it comes to checking them, we actually are using an enum that has those things listed. So it might be worth at some point just improving that so that we're using an enum. Although, actually, I think there's a reason we can't. Yeah, of course, because because it needs to be compatible with the helm, the sensors, tactical, and anything else. And of course, we can't just have a struct or an enum of helm orders as our data, because that then won't work for the other bridge station. So no, it has to be a string. Annoying, because it means remembering what the strings are, but it makes it more generic, which is nice. Okay, so now we just need to do the objective tracking for these. So again, rather than waiting for a broadcast to say that the button has been pressed, which is a little bit it's a little bit there and then. So if in any way that broadcast is missed, then in terms of like temporal problems, it's never going to be checked again. Whereas if we check that the targets match instead, then we can recheck that over and over, which makes for more robust objective tracking on the whole. What's the best way of doing this? So if we get our ship state, and then we have a look at our task. So the task itself will have a target. Hang on, what are we doing? This is right, I think these two actually are using that, because all we're doing is we are just raising navigate to location, but with different coordinates. So they don't need to be there. In fact, they can be removed from the enum to stop confusing me. So use sensor target then. It needs to be whatever we currently have targeted. So that's our current nav target. And again, on the helm, we are tracking bits of the target separately, as opposed to using the helm target struct. And ironically, we're kind of using the helm target struct everywhere except on the helm, which is where it should be first and foremost. But to change it means rejigging a bunch of stuff, so we'll have to live with it for a moment. So what are we doing? Use sensor target. So if, yeah, I guess with either of those, just need to make sure that, oh no, it's fine. Just, obviously we've got two things here which both do essentially the same thing. It's just getting the data from a different place. Now we don't want to compare this to the live command target, because the live command target might have changed since the order was raised. Similarly, the sensor target might have changed since the order was raised. So we want to, we do capture the address at the point the order is raised, so we're comparing it against that. So quite simply, all we need to do is just make sure that our current nav target on the helm is equal to whatever we captured at the point the order was raised. And if they are both identical, then we know that the objectives have been satisfied for this particular task. And that's equally true whether it's a sensor or command. In fact, both of those can both do exactly the same thing. And then we'll borrow that. Yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter which of those two things are being checked, because they both need to check exactly the same thing. Right, let's just collapse all that. Okay, that's that, and then we don't need those two again, so I can delete those in a minute. Okay, so we're checking our task coordinates against the ship coordinates and removing the index if that's true, then alerting the UIs. Okay, that should be that done. Okay, so that handles checking it. Let's just make sure we name that something. Check task target to helm target. Oops. Would help if I could spell. Check task against task target against helm target. Yeah, that works. Check task target against helm target. If they match, we can close the orders. Right. Okay, so we're raising it. We're checking completion objectives. What we're not doing right now is actioning it. So we now need to just add those abilities there, and these ones are going to be really simple. Yeah, we don't even need to check against anything. We can just raise immediate action. When it comes to a single button press, all we're actually doing is we're just remotely pressing whatever button that is on the relevant UI. So that was use command target, use sensor target. Oh wait, yeah. We've already got them even. Use command target. Use sensor target. Yes, we don't need that or that. And again, those will get deleted. Swap them round for the sake of it. And I suppose, just to keep it neat, use sensor target. Use command target. And then we'll NPC skill logic. So that's the NPC skills. So for each of the bridge stations, we need to make sure that we have abilities and skills set up for all the different things we want those NPCs to be able to do. And then we can call those when needed. So again, the NPC does the actions, and then this tracks to see whether the actions have been completed or not. So let's just give that a quick whirl and see. So there's our sensor target, there's our command target. So first of all, use command target. That's actually, before we do that, let's just check the order appears and disappears. Use command target. Okay, so we should have pointed at something. Nope. I say no, but that's interesting. So I think it has actually set it, but it's not updated the UI. So we need to make sure that the UI updates, because it's not updating any of this stuff. Okay, so let's try similarly use sensor target. So again, it's the orders are disappearing because we are in fact updating that appropriately, just not the UI. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know what that nanite error is referring to. It's saying there's a lot of non-nanite meshes that are being processed by virtual shadow maps. But like, what exactly? Because the only non-nanite meshes would be these things, I expect. And they're not casting shadows, so unless they are casting shadows erroneously, but they shouldn't be. If I do that. See, now there's loads of them. I don't know, it doesn't come up consistently, so yeah, it's hard to know what's going on with it. Oh, there we go again. It does seem to be when I'm over here. But like everything you see is nanite. Oh, unless it could be the polarization on the window, because the message comes up when the window kind of fills most of the viewport. So you can't have transparency with nanite, which would explain it. I'll have to investigate on that, because if that's causing an FPS drop, then it needs fixing. It seems to come up when I'm over here. Don't know. Something for me to look into. Right, let's just, within the system, check that those other two options are working. So if we set that as our command target, and then set Jupiter as our sensor target. Maybe even Pluto actually, so we can see it. Yeah, so that's our sensor target, that's our command target. If we navigate to sensor target, then we should set our nav to there. And if we then add navigate to command target to the list, it should go there next. So then we should have two orders in the queue. Let's just make sure that it does actually do that, so that we're just confirming that the sensor and command targets are both working in parallel. I won't wait for it to completely slow down. So if I cancel the sensor target one, it should go straight to the helm target one instead. Yeah, so they're working then, that's fine. Okay, so if we cancel that then, and then we say use sensor target, which it has done. Interestingly. But why is it not completing? Okay, so if we do use command target and then cancel the current orders, does it go back to the other one? Yes, it does. It's slightly concerning that we're getting 0 values on these coordinates. Does that mean we're checking against a 0 value maybe? It's also interesting that that was updating the UI. So that one is 1498. Yeah, and it did change, so we're definitely changing targets when we do that. Right, so we all actually cancel current orders. Cancel that one. Right, so the ship is stopped. Autopilot is disengaged. So if we target, say, Neptune, then what we should be able to do is say use command target. So we should now have targeted Neptune, which we have. We can then say prepare to depart. Now, right now it's not going to do anything because use command target has not been successfully cleared, but if we cancel the pressing of the button, it's now doing the preparing to depart bit. So we're facing our target, and then we can engage FTL, which will take us there. So we've got that kind of 3-step progress where we are targeting something, preparing to depart by facing the ship at it, and then we're engaging the FTL. Or we could have saved ourselves all the trouble and just hit navigate to command target as a shortcut, which I imagine is what people are going to be using more than the other options. Okay, So we just need to check then why oh why are we not picking up the coordinates for the helm or nav target? Because they do get set. So use sensor target. Oh, look, we're not setting it there, that's why. Right. So as much as we're pressing the button, we're not recording, we're not storing the target when we raise the orders, which is why it's reading a 0 value. So we need to get sensors data, and then from that we need specifically our sensor nav target. So that gets set when you press the center helm button. But because there's a mismatch on struct types, again, that's something we need to resolve. We need to basically grab the data from different places, and this is why we have this more condensed helm target struct, is because otherwise we have literally all the data from the planet, which obviously we don't need. So things like the physical characteristics and the naming and the coordinates. So we don't want all this data that we're storing. Like in this instance here, we just need the basic name, the radius. So name, radius, and then coordinates. And then determine whether or not it's a star system. So if it's a star system, that is true, otherwise it is not. And then we don't need any of that other data. So this would all be a lot easier if our sensor nav target was stored as our helm target struct rather than like the full planetary data. And I did this out of laziness so that when we query this on the helm, we can pull out any data we might need at any point, which I did kind of for future-proofing reasons. But it's too much stuff. It's so much stuff that we don't need. It's better to focus on only what we do need. So I need to do the same thing for use command target. So again, we are not actually giving it or storing a target. So as much as, again, it's pressing the button, it's not tracking properly. Yeah, so that's a fair point actually. I just used the sensor target details on the nav target one when it actually just needs that. See how much easier that is by using the same struct. And then nav to sensor target. Yeah, so we're doing the same thing there, where we are just doing that, although just for completeness sake, we will just flag that as needed. Right, so now it should properly track those objectives and close them off, and also show the right numbers on the little task box as well. Oh, hey Sirius, didn't see you appear there. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so no current orders. Let's go ahead and we'll use this one. Right, so we'll set Venus as our sensor target, and then we'll set where's Mars? We'll set Mars as our command target. So that's two separate targets that are now stored. If we tell them to use the command target, we should now have targeted Mars. Not quite sure why it's not picking up on the name. I should have to look into that. It does say Mars. Oh, I imagine it's because it's picking up the level 0 name for the object rather than its actual scanned name. Okay, and it cleared that off, so that's fine. So if we also now then use sensor target, it's now targeting Venus, and again the order has disappeared. So if we now prepare to depart, which will turn on the autopilot, we will face that object. Okay, so using the command target, should face us to Mars, then using the sensor target will face us back to Venus, and then we should be able to just engage the FTL drive, and then off we pop. And the orders were appearing and disappearing as required, which be good. So if I now get rid of the NPC, and then we, oops, no, don't sit in the chair. And then we use command target. I just wanted to check that the coordinates were appearing properly, which they are. And similarly, use sensor target. Or use sensor target appeared and disappeared because our coordinates are already the sensor target. So basically that was a pointless order. So if I now set Mercury as our sensor target, and we do the same thing, get out of the chair, and we do the same thing, use sensor target, you'll find that we are now properly tracking the coordinates. And I've just realised that we've just, I think, gone inside Venus. That's suboptimal. Now, was that because I'm messing around with it, or are we missing something? Pop the NPC back. You can see that they are clearing off the orders. Well done them. So if we navigate to our sensor target, oh, sorry, navigate to our sensor target. Just want to make sure that we don't plow into Mercury. Is that what I set? Yeah, Mercury. But objectives wise, it all seems to be raising and tracking properly, which is good. I suppose just to double check, just making sure it's also on here. And I added a cancel order button as well for the latest build, just for usability's sake. Yeah, so NPCs touching the buttons, that is something that will be coming when we replace the character system. So right now we're using a very, very old version of ALS, and it's not great. And, ooh, are we getting a... Right, so our arrival distance tracking is off. So if I just cancel that order a minute, it will give up in a sec. Right, so what was happening there is the order was still in the system because it didn't think that we'd arrived close enough to the target location. Now what it should be doing is the autopilot cuts out at 1.5 times the object radius, and the order should mark as complete at twice the object's radius. So we've got like half of the object's radius in terms of breathing room, where it's like tracking it, but for some reason for smaller objects that's not working. So I need to make sure that that we properly track that, because obviously something's wrong. I mean, the radius is correct, so weird. But yes, so we know where in the world all the buttons are. So what we'll have the NPC do is we'll use the finger IK and the IK for the body to just reach out and jab at whatever button that is. So every time the NPC presses a button, like logically, when we inject that button press from the NPC, they will actually reach out and press that actual button, because we can track the world space location of the buttons on the screens. So yes, that will be a thing, but we need to make sure that we have the updated character system first, so that all of that is kind of factored in. Fredishay, yes. So I was going to do it for this update, but removing this beam and kind of rebuilding these windows is a bigger task than I gave it credit for. I think in terms of, I'll just go and grab a camera a minute so we can have a proper look at it. Oh, is that yeah, let's make sure that those have a radial menu associated with them. Okay. Oh, why can't we go through the window? That shouldn't be blocking the camera. Huh. Weird. The camera should be able to fly through windows, but that's alright, we'll go through the floor instead. This is my test map, which is why half the ship's missing. But yes, so in terms of the physical structure of the bridge, we'll probably keep this diagonal strut here and keep that shape, and then remove these wedges on the front here, and remove this beam around here. But that would make essentially just one giant expanse of glass all the way around, which is just too much glass. That's basically just a bubble of glass around the bridge. So what I'll do instead is I'll make it so that it's more of a lattice work of support struts that are much thinner and probably like a black metal in color. I guess similar to the surround we've got around here. That is actually quite a dark coloured metal. It's just because it's in direct sunlight, it's kind of lit up more than it should be. True, as Claire just pointed out, it's not actually glass. It's some kind of carbon crystal. We haven't come up with a precise name for it yet. It's like wafers of carbon nanotubes joined together in a clever way to make a transparent material, which is stronger and more durable than the ship's hull, but and this is how we're kind of explaining this one away, it's because it's such a strong material, it has to be created in the shape that it is, with all the attachment holes and everything already part of the structure at the point where it's manufactured. So you can't drill through it, you can't weld it, you can't put holes through it or use it as a construction material, because it is so hard and so durable. You can't build things with it. But as a window, if you have all the attachment holes in place already, then you can manufacture it to shape, and it makes a really good window. Really super tough and stronger than the hull. So that's what the windows are. They're a carbon crystal. But yeah, if we were to just remove the beam, then the bridge would look really, really weird with such a large expanse of transparency. So it's going to require some form of structure around it. Just one that is not quite as view blocking as this one is. Yeah, way, way stronger than polycarbonate. It's essentially diamond, so a pure carbon material with a very specific crystalline structure, which makes it very, very hard and very, very durable and very expensive. So there are many reasons you can't build with it, expense being just one of those reasons. Right, so all of that worked. So what's next? So basically we need to just do all that again, but this time for the sensor station, so that the sensor's tasks are tracked and managed in the same way that the helm ones are. So same as the helm, this is our task skills, task slash skills logic. Actually, it's just that really. So this is where we define their ability to do things. So as you can see, we're missing some stuff from here. Some of these things are multi-step tasks. Like this one's a bit cryptic, but it basically means find something on the medium range that is less than knowledge level 3 and then send it to the helm. So there's quite a lot of logic involved in completing that task. So this is where we're sort of teaching the NPC the skills in order to do that. The other things should hopefully be much simpler. So we need an option for each of the 4 sensor modes so that we can bring those up. And then we need the use command to target button, and I guess perform short range scan on whatever the current target is. So that needs rewording slightly. It should do an ASCII, yes. If you're experiencing issues with it, raise it as a bug ticket and try and be really precise with exactly what you did and what it's doing versus what you expected it to be doing, so I can follow the logic through. because I think we're at the point now with this system and with the tasks and everything where it works fine except for a few edge cases, and we just need to identify what those edge cases are. I've tried to make it as robust as possible so that you can futz around with the UIs and press buttons and generally just mess about with the NPCs, and they should always be able to recover and still complete their task, unless there are some edge cases that we've missed. So it's just a case of every time we discover an edge case, improve the logic to make sure that that's dealt with accordingly. Right then. So the helm obviously has this subgraph where we are raising the actual orders with the task manager. So we essentially need to do the same thing where we are switching on our string, and then we need to add all of the relevant task IDs for our sensors communications channel. So if we just collapse that. Handle sensors orders. So these orders that we're raising here are separate to these ship-wide orders. So the ship-wide orders are able to raise individual tasks on a per station basis via the task manager, whereas these two are station orders which are being raised via the radial menu. So they're largely doing some of the same stuff, just from a different angle. And then this is basically just anything else. So if it's not something on one of these channels, then it just gets dealt with as a generic radial menu message. Oh, have a good one, Delta. Enjoy. Save some for me. I couldn't be bothered to cook today, so I had a Tesco's meal deal. Just had a sandwich and a Snickers. That was it. That's all I've eaten today. Having a lazy day. To be fair, it was a breakfast triple sandwich, so it wasn't exactly small. Okay. So on our vehicle master, so these are the 4 bridge modes, and these are the action IDs that are being sent through. Now, by doing what I just did and adding this on here, all of a sudden nothing on the radial menu will now work, because we're intercepting that chain of events by using a matching broadcast channel for gameplay messages. So rather than it going out the default pin and just being handled as a broadcast message, we're now raising a task on it instead properly. So we need to take what we're doing here and start raising orders for these specific actions. And I suppose we'll start out with the zoomy ones because they're relevant across the board, and we'll also need to create the orders for those on this enum as well, because they're not actually represented right now. So there's going to be a little bit of bouncing back and forth between the different blueprints whilst we build up our catalogue of action IDs and associated orders. And I will always forget which tab things are on, just to complicate matters. What I might do actually, if we put the four sensor modes first, and then we handle the generic zooming in and out, because zoom in and out is it works on all 4 sensor modes. So we just need to make sure we check which mode we're on before we fire it, and then we can do the more mode specific stuff. See, I knew I'd lose what tab I was on. So that one next. I'm going to copy paste them rather than guessing, because chances are I will have been non-consistent with my naming conventions, as always, as I am here. So that one just says long, whereas that one says medium range. So is it going to be sensors short, or is it going to be sensors short range? Depends how I felt at the time. And the winner is sensors short range. One day I'll be consistent with these things. Future me would appreciate it. Okay, so mode, zooms, and then we can handle our actual mode specific stuff. So GPS only has zoom in and out, so that's fine. Okay, long range. Okay, so there's 2, right, so we need to do the logic for conducting a long-range survey, and that also needs to encompass being focused on a given star system. So the reason I've included this on the top level of the menu is because we need to be able to target a star system and then just tell the sensors to conduct a survey. So we don't want to have to say, align to target, now run the survey. We will have that available as an option, but again, we need that all-in-one shortcut action where you can just target a star system and say conduct a survey, and then leave it on the sensors to be intelligent enough to make sure it aligns to target first. But this action is dependent on whether or not you're already aligned to target. So it needs to be intelligent enough to kind of sniff out exactly what the current state is on the sensors before picking its action. And then we have the ability to focus, the ability to go back to the main listing, and then the zoom buttons, which we are catering for anyway. Yeah, true PSV. Yeah, it's for me it's like a mood thing, and also forgetting what I did a month ago. Like I'll pick up a system which I literally haven't touched in weeks or months, and I will have completely forgotten why I was naming things the way I did all those months ago. So I'll just kind of start fresh and name things slightly differently. And then you end up with a case where the stuff you did months ago ends up with a different naming convention to the stuff you've just done. And then you end up with clashes, and then you can't work out why that's connected to that. And yeah, the challenge is real. Keeping documentation on such things would be the solution, but I hate paperwork. I've never been good at paperwork. If anyone ever asks me the question in a job interview, what would you say your weaknesses are? The honest answer is always paperwork. I suck at paperwork. True that. And yes, Claire is right. I am indeed a nightmare. Yeah, remembering to call people back, that's another thing I suck at. Alright, let's do this one next. And then we've got I guess we're only ever going to be dealing with command targets anyway, so I'm wondering whether yeah, that is kind of implied, but let's keep it for now. Okay, that should be everything catered for. This one's easier. So we've got zoom in, zoom out, and the sensor mode itself. And of course, the ability to conduct a survey. So what we can do... I'm just thinking, we want the ability to do our medium range survey, but not if the system's already been completely surveyed. And I guess whilst the survey's running, we also need the ability to cancel that survey. So let's add that. At some point in the future, there will be a need to, that's the level 0 option. Need to recreate those as level 1 options. There'll be a need to maybe rerun medium range surveys to pick up transitory things. So there might be something within a star system which is changing over time. So rerunning a medium range survey will pick up the changes in whatever that thing is. Might be something that's moving, might be something that's changing. But yeah, we could do with I guess leaving in the option to rerun it whenever you want to, even if everything's been fully scanned. So conduct a survey. We don't want to remain open. We don't have any sub-items. So this one should be cancel survey. Make sure that is organized appropriately. She's not wrong. I suppose we need to cancel survey on the long range as well while we're at it. Yeah, and then we will branch these so that so conduct survey will only be there if you're not already running a survey, and this one, cancel survey, will only be there if you are running a survey. Luckily, we do flag that on the sensors data. So we do know in advance if we are conducting a survey. Scanning, there we go. In fact, we could just do that, couldn't we? We don't need separate branches because that's a nice simple yes or no situation. Thank you, Fred O'Shea. Much appreciated. I will get our engineers busy on coming up with a framework structure that doesn't look silly. On there a minute. So medium survey, medium cancel survey, and then we've got long survey and long cancel survey. And we'll make sure that we add that to the long range as well. Of course, and we were also checking on this particular one whether or not we do actually have a target already, because obviously there's no point conducting a survey if we don't have a system targeted, and then yeah, because this is the point at which we actually do the order. So in actual fact, I think what we'll do is we'll do it this way round. So if we're already scanning, then we want to cancel the survey, and we don't care if we've got a target or not, because we are just cancelling the survey. However, if we are not currently running a survey, then we need to make sure that we do actually have a target before doing anything. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a redundant action. Okay. Tidy that up a bit. Right, so if we're scanning, offer a cancel button. If we're not scanning and we have a target, then offer a survey button. Otherwise, do all the stuff we were doing before. And then on the medium range, yeah, so we don't need to worry about having something targeted because we are just scanning the whole system. I was wondering whether we should check whether or not the sensors are actually on the long range mode, but we can still set the order to conduct a survey on the current system, and it might be worth actually tracking that objective in these structs. So that helm target struct that we've got, it might be worth including that on this struct so that when we're raising our radial menu action, we're passing that through so that we have a reference to as close, well, like literally to the millisecond, what was the command target when we press the button. Because as much as we're adding that like a couple of milliseconds later, there is a window there for things to change, even if it's very, very small. Whereas here there'd be no window for change. So that might be a hardening we can do at some point. But that aside, I think that is everything. So we've got running the survey, cancelling the survey. Neither of those need to stay open, so that's fine. And then short range. So there are a couple of situations where I'm a little confused as to how to handle it. So let's say you've arrived at a star system, you're looking at the medium range sensors, so you're looking at all the planets and things laid out on the holo display. Now it would be good if you could target something and just say fully scan this object. So rather than telling the ship to scan the whole system, just scan an individual target. I think actually, to be honest, as I'm saying that, I think I might have just worked it out at the same time. So it would have to be a ship-wide order rather than a specific sensors order or a specific helm order, because obviously the short-range sensors only work when you're at the location of the object. So if you're at Earth and you're saying, right, go scan Pluto, you can't say to the sensors person, go scan Pluto, because they'll just turn around and say, I can't, it's not in range. So that's kind of an invalid order. So either you tell the helm to fly to Pluto and then tell the sensors person to scan Pluto, or as a ship-wide order, we have a ship-wide order for scan Pluto, in which case it will go through the same logic checks of, are we in the right system? And to be honest, that works even at long range. So if you do a long range scan and you see something which is an Earth-like candidate, so you've got like a terrestrial planet, it's in the habitable zone, you know nothing else about it at that point, you should be able to target that planet specifically and tell the bridge, go do a scan of this target, without necessarily bothering with scanning the entire system if you just want to scan that one target. So that's going to have to be raised as a ship-wide order, or rather a bridge-wide order, to go and do that. And it also makes me think that bridge orders, as in bridge-wide orders, might need to be tracked separately from ship-wide orders, because if the bridge-wide order is go and scan this star system, there could be another ship-wide order for doing something different. But I'll see how that works, because I suppose department-wide orders are going to be needed, because things like engineering, setting the ship cold and dark or setting the ship flight ready, it's not a ship-wide order because the catering crew don't care about it, but engineering do, and everyone in engineering should care. So we would need an engineering-wide order, so a department-wide order that raises individual crew tasks for all the different actions that need to take place to either set the ship cold and dark or set it to some other profile that's been pre-configured. So we just need to make sure that the system includes all of that as options. So while we're doing the helm as the sensors now, we'll also add go scan a single target to that list as well, so that we can cherry pick individual planets and individual systems and just scan those, rather than having it scan the entire system every single time, which you might not want to do. Yeah, our military ships, depending on what they are, will or won't have windows. So if it's a battleship or destroyer, then I imagine it will have an embedded bridge right in the middle somewhere, in some kind of hardened shell. So all the critical command and control and hardware will be in hardened bunkers within the ship. If it's something like a carrier, I guess like modern day carriers, they've got like giant flight control towers, and their bridge is right up on top of a tower, basically, right out in the open, surrounded by windows. So I think it depends on the vessel. If it's like a fleet command vessel, then it's not going to be in the thick of it as much as, say, a battleship would. So I think we'll make that call based on the role of the vessel. But yes, the kind of combat vessels that are in the thick of it probably won't have more than portholes in terms of windows. Although again, the material we're using for glass is harder than the hull, so there is an argument to be made that having windows doesn't actually matter so much. Couldn't possibly see yet, Anati. It's we're not even in the planning phase for that ship yet. I know I want it to look a little bit like a Star Destroyer, but that aside, haven't really thought on it. Right, let's just add the same logic here. Oh, of course, and we've got the map options as well. So short range is going to be a little bit more complicated. Okay, so on the short range we'll have scan command target, so same as medium range or long range really. Whatever the command target is, raise an order to perform a short range scan on it. And that's just, depending on whether we are actually scanning. So if we are scanning, we have the option to cancel. If we're not scanning, we have the option to do the scan. Although, in the interests of completeness, we only want that to be an option if we have an active command target. Because if we don't have one, then that is an invalid action. So we will just do that. So that will only be an option on the menu if there's a valid target selected, and then that doesn't care if there's a target or not. Okay, so that takes care of the scan. Okay, and then we also have the ability to bring up the map. And this is going to be a complicated one because we're dealing with an extra layer of menu. So the last thing is going to have to do that. So we want to, I guess, clear that here. Yeah, so we'll clear off our level 2 array. And that's what we're using as our sub items for our level 1 menu, so that's the last thing on the list. So above that we need these. I think I will, rather than try and dual purpose one button, we'll just check to see whether or not we are actually looking at a surface map or not, and then we'll use branches on that to track that. Okay, so guess we need to do that sooner. Okay, so if we're not actually, let's get rid of that one and put it over there. Right, so if we're not currently looking at the surface map, then we'll clear off our level 2 array, and then we'll give it the option to populate that array with options, and then add the button for those options. So we need making sure I haven't just broke this a minute. Yeah. So that would be open or show surface map, display surface map. So that would be open map. And then also close map. Oh, and also scanning as well. So what did I call it? So scan target and cancel scan. Let's just make sure we add those. So scan target and cancel scan. So scan target, cancel scan. Okay. So all of these will have orders created for them, and then they will need skills associated with them as well. And then the sensor's NPC will be complete. Okay, so display surface map. So if that actually needs to be a switch, not a branch, because if we're on the surface map, then we need to close the surface map. And we shall move all this over here a bit out the way. Okay. So if we're not on a page, then we've got the option to open the map. If we are on a page, actually, should probably include these as a sub branch of this, because if we're currently looking at the surface map, then ideally we don't want the scan buttons on there. So let's go ahead and do that instead. So we'll get rid of that, pop that over there. Yeah, so those options will only be available if we're not currently looking at a surface map. Just to keep the menu concise, so that we're not bringing up menu items that are just going to bloat the UI unnecessarily if they're not relevant at that precise moment. Yeah, and if the map is open, then we need another set of options. So the first one would be close the map, and then we need these, which are our toggles. And these ones can just be a button press, so we don't need to track those necessarily, although the difficulty with this being a toggle is it's not a simple case of checking to see whether cloud layers are being shown, because we're toggling it rather than turning it on or off. So we kind of need to check to see whether or not the current state is different to what it was before. Let's grab our sensors data a minute. We should have some of that listed under short range. Yeah, so we've got clouds, day, night, signatures, and topology, which we're not using right now. Okay, so we'll use these for our objective tracking, so that we can just compare the toggle versus the true or false on these booleans, and if the toggle is different from what was stored, then we know that the toggle has happened. Yeah, so that's not needed. We don't need to do any branching on this one at this point. Oh, hang on, these need to be level 3, don't they? Yeah, so if the map is open, if it's not, we click that, remain open and refresh. Actually, we don't necessarily need the level 2 stuff actually, because let's get my brain around it again. Yeah, so this is a level 1 menu item, and we're just clicking display surface map. At that point, we'll refresh the menu. These would not be drawn because we'll then be on surface map, in which case we only need close the map or toggle the various map elements. So yes, we don't actually need to use any sub items on here, so that can just be an action. Yeah, which means that these just need to branch accordingly. Thinking all of this through really does like push the old neurons. It's definitely mental gymnastics sometimes. Right, so that's Let's close map. And then we've got toggle clouds. Again, it's an action. That one can go. Then we've got toggle day night terminator. Wondering whether we need to remain open on this. So some of the feedback I need from you guys when you're doing the dev build testing is instances where the radial menu is left open or closed, and whether or not through playtesting you feel in certain situations it should have stayed open or it should have closed. Like if there's something where you're always having to manually close it or you're always having to reopen it. So like if you're toggling through the different surface overlays, then we might not necessarily want to close the menu, because you can like toggle through each one without it closing every single time. But that would be useful feedback whilst you are playtesting. Okay. Looks complicated, but it should be straightforward. Right, and on here we've got open map, close map, and then we should just need the 3 toggles to be added to, obviously, in the future as we add more stuff. Right, I think that's all of them. So mode, handle zooms, long range survey, cancel survey, focus on the command, focus on the target, go back to the main listing, do a medium range survey, again on the command target. Well, no, I guess that's just always going to be current system, isn't it? Or cancel that. Short range scan's always going to have a target, and then we cancel the scan, open map, close the map, toggle the terminators. Yeah, I think that is everything for the sensors. Right. So that covers the handling of the radial menu and the point at which we then need to create the order on the actual task manager. So surely we have that. No. I called it something different. So yeah, so that's our task manager, which we will name appropriately. Okay, then we want to raise or create bridge orders. So this is going to be sensors, and that is the order in question that we are creating. And then we need a random int in range, spelt correctly, from 0 to the maximum int minus a bit so that it actually works. I found that if you were to set that for the maximum 32-bit integer, then it always returns 0. I don't know whether that's a bug or like a math thing, but it will always return 0. If you just replace the last couple of digits with zeros, so it's not actually the maximum value, then it will return a proper random number. That caught me out for ages until I figured out what it was doing. Okay. So the job now is to take each one of these individual actions that can take place on sensors and convert each and every one of these to an actual order that we're tracking through the task manager. So of course, this list needs to be represented on our enum for the sensors. And then we just need to write some pithy objectives for each one. And where necessary, include our command target. So, I guess first things first, we need that enum. So it's bridge orders sensors. Let's go and squirrel that out from wherever I hit it. Bridge order sensors, there we go. Right, so I need to basically change this enum so that it matches our list of action IDs, with the slight exception that some of them are already being used as part of our global orders. So I just need to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes there. So right now, navigate to location is like a global task because it has like a long logic chain associated with it. So that's like a multi-part action. That was the helm one, but yeah, same difference. So we're going to have to do the same thing for the sensors. Where's the sensors one gone? That one. Yeah, so I guess some of these we can reuse. Yeah, so we'll do the logic for that. This is ultimately the button press that we're firing here. But we're going to have to do the logic for all of those. So I'll probably put global tasks like this one. We'll stick them at the top of the list. The ones that have kind of complex logic associated with them, multi-action tasks, we'll stick that at the top. Yeah, and then we'll see another point of confusion for my poor addled brain is things like searching for Earth-like candidates or searching for text signatures. That is ostensibly a sensor's job. So the rest of the bridge don't really have any involvement in that. So you should be able to go to the sensors person and say, right, find me an Earth-like candidate. And they can be doing that whilst the other bridge stations are busy doing something else. So it's not classed as a ship-wide order, but it is a multi-part action which needs to be tracked in some way. it's almost a department order, but it's a station task, which is a continuous loop that needs to have very specific objective tracking, and most importantly for these ones, the ability to alert the captain that the objective has been completed. So I suppose that's where we'll have the ability to have orders on the command console, so that we have those reports back. And we also need that for things like comms. So if there's a communication from Earth, the Admiralty wants you to go and investigate some grid coordinates, that needs to come up on the command console as an incoming hail, which the command console then needs to deal with via the comms console. But in the same way, if you as the captain ask the sensors person to autonomously seek out a certain thing, if they find that thing, they then need to make you aware that they have found that thing and stop what they're doing. So they need a kind of a fire and forget task where they close off their own objectives, but then create an objective for the command console. So there needs to be a back and forth there between the two things. So yeah, those are going to be fun ones, and that's probably, if we get all this done tonight, that's probably the next stream, because that's going to be quite fun to do actually. On to my third bottle. Assuming it doesn't fizz everywhere. I don't normally drink this much during the day. I guess just on stream, just like talking constantly, I get a very dry mouth. Ugh, what's that? Oh, Tesco lemon and lime. Nowhere near as nice as the elderflower one. It should be vodka, yeah. Right, let's pop that up the top. So multi-part action, multi-part action, multi-part action, and then I guess we can just add those. Select long range mode, select medium range mode, select short range mode. So mode, that's our 4 modes. Yeah, then some of these are not actually relevant. Now there's an interesting one as well that's just occurred to me. We need to select the command target, or do we? Or do we? So on the sensors, I'm trying to think of the interface here between the captain and the sensors person, and the kind of information that's going to be displayed on the holo display. So I'm just thinking through scenarios where as the captain, you're going to want the sensors person to say, show me stuff on whatever they have targeted. So the first one, I suppose, is long range. You target a star system, and then you can say, like, show me this system, and that's the focus target button. So we've got that covered, so the captain can see the system. If they target an object within a system, I guess they need something along the lines of like, show me details about this target. Now, it might be the case that we do that anyway. Like, I guess we need to give the command crew a bit of autonomy. So if the captain selects a target, I think it would be good to have a little floating hologrammatic data panel of some kind, especially if we structure the holo display so that it has practically always a little floaty screen, so that it's got the ability to zoom in and out and spin the display and that sort of thing. So just display controls that are holographic in their own nature. Then we can have data that comes up on there. So as the captain is selecting stuff on the holo display, they have their own little UI readouts, which is just floating in midair in front of them as part of the holo display, that contains a lot of details about that target. So as the captain, you can go and, like, just poke a bunch of stuff, read the details, and if you want to perform an action on that, then you can look over at the sensors guy and say, right, do a thing. That's probably the way of handling that. What we don't want is for the interaction with the crew to be too low level. We don't want it to be really, really granular. We don't want it to be, right, press this button, now press this button, and now press that button. We want it to be, here's a high level objective. How you complete that objective is up to you, but that's what I want you to do. So we just need to make sure that this reflects that. The only, I guess, exception to that is going to be the individual mode buttons, because I guess as the captain, you're going to want to say, show me the local system, in which case you want the medium range, or show me the galactic neighborhood, in which case you want the long range. So I guess those are tasks that need to be completed as a one-off, and it's not particularly granular because you're just asking for information. When it comes to scanning something, you shouldn't need to go step by step. You should just say, oi, scan that, and then they should be able to work that out for themselves, be it a player or NPC. So I just need to bear that in mind on here, because we've got these select target options, and they would be, I guess, stand-ins for target the command target, but we don't necessarily need to tell them to target the command target. We want them to do stuff with the command target. So scan the command target, not necessarily target it, because that's probably a little bit redundant. So if we just make sure that we are not actually doing anything with that. Yeah, so it's just the two scans that we are dealing with. So let's go ahead and delete. So that one, and that one. Hey, Matt Demento. Yeah, in some ways it needs to be a one size fits all because it needs to cater for any circumstances. But yes, I think shortcuts are definitely needed, and they need to be as high up the menu structure as possible, so that you're not having to dig down to things that you do regularly. Which is why things like scan this star system need to be like pretty much there first. It's the first thing you see. Yeah, if you mean like a scripted sequence of events, then what we're doing here is making that possible because we are empowering the NPC with the skills that it needs to carry out essentially anything on this list for the sensors. So you could technically script a series of actions that involve any of these particular abilities. So yeah, I guess some of these things are perhaps more tactical in their nature. So on the tactical station, you could ask them to keep scanning the local area for signs of danger, because the sensors console is more science oriented, whereas the tactical console will have its own scanning ability. Yeah, we're undoubtedly going to refine this as we go. In fact, we already have quite a few times. Like the more we build and flesh out this system, the more those refinements kind of present themselves, and you get a feel of where we're lacking in some intuitiveness with the system, where it's clunky, where it's nice and smooth. So we're constantly tweaking and tuning what's possible. But yeah, once we build up this catalogue of skills and actions, then they can be called at any time in any order. So we can set up scripted sequences if need be. Oh, that's an interesting question. That's like business speak, isn't it? Yes. Are you proactive? I don't know, to be honest. I think probably I'm more strategic than tactical, because I like to sit back and gather all of the facts and all of the data before committing to an action. So I suppose that's more strategic than tactical. But yeah, interesting question. Yes, I've heard of Artemis 2. We did a watch party on it yesterday. Not yesterday, day before. I enjoy planning more than doing, certainly. Planning's the fun part. Doing is where you get bored. I would say that my thought process is very much data driven. I guess I apply that at all times in anything in life. Like, I will never judge a situation or a person without gathering all of the facts first. I'll never just believe something I see online. In fact, I have this conversation with my son quite often, because he'll come along and say, "Oh, I've just seen this thing and they've got this fact and this is really bad." And I'll say, "Well, have you actually looked it up for yourself? Have you actually checked your sources? Have you actually looked at the data?" And then when you actually dig into something, you'll find that this thing that's being spouted off on TikTok about some fact or other is completely wrong and not in line with the data at all. So yeah, I always encourage data gathering and data checking before forming an opinion on anything. I do actually have the stream up. Oh yeah, they're doing stuff. Not sure what they're doing. Actually, the insides of that look bigger than I was expecting. Like the capsule I thought was quite small, but clearly not. Yeah, I've usually got the stream running on my other screen. How many steps? Yeah, I guess I probably fall into the category of over-analyzing. So I will, yeah, I will delve deep and long into a thing before deciding upon an action. And yeah, probably too much delving and too much digging. Yes, Everin. In fact, we've been saying it's imminent for many, many weeks, months even. But that does remain the case. It is still imminent. So as soon as it is polished and bug-free, then Tech Demo 4 is going out. We're just waiting for that moment. It's difficult and probably impossible to put a timescale on it, but yeah, as soon as it is bug-free, polished, working properly in multiplayer, and we have no reason to withhold it any longer, then yeah, it can go straight out. And we're not adding anything new in terms of new gameplay or systems ahead of Tech Demo 4 going live. So the stuff I'm working on now is basically fleshing out and refining the thing that we were already working on, which was the Radial menu and the bridge orders stuff. Like, I'm not going to move on to comms, I'm not going to move on to any of the surface probe stuff. We've basically stopped working on new features until this is ready to go live. Although the feature creep is real. Right, where were we? So mode. So we've got mode. So zooming out, I always get this mixed up. So we've got increase range and decrease range. I think we'll just stick to zoom out and zoom in for now, because increasing range is, hang on, you're increasing the display range, so the object is getting smaller. Yeah, so increasing display range is zooming out. decreasing the display range makes everything bigger, so you're zooming in. Zoom out / increase range. And then zoom in, which is also decrease range. Really? Is there I've got it muted. I may not have at the time. Hang on, let me just make sure I've got no other windows open. No, I don't think so. Yeah, let me know if there's like background audio creeping in from somewhere. Are you sure you don't have it open on your side? Okay, so perform long range survey. Cancel long range survey. Focus on target. Turn to long range overview. I'm going to perform medium range survey. Cancel medium range survey. Yeah, that's but well, you can do medium range really. Okay, so perform short range scan, cancel short range scan. Okay, then we've got open surface map and close surface map. And then there are 3 toggles. Toggle surface map clouds, Terminator, and tech signatures. Right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And then those are the 3 multi-part ones. Great. So we now have an enum that we can associate with all of these. So for each of these, we now have the right thing that we can select. And then we'll collapse all of these accordingly. Okay, so sensors GPS is select GPS mode. Select the GPS mode. Some of the objectives are very simple, and we don't need a target for that. So we can just collapse that. Select GPS mode. So we now have to go through and create an order for each and every one of all of these, including data where needed. Select long range mode. This is going to be a long list. Yeah, I was looking at Kitten Space Agency. Definitely shows promise. As well it should, given who's making it. Just make sure that we are setting the right actual order on here. So select the long range mode on the sensors, just to make it a little bit more verbose. The medium range mode on the sensors. So select medium range. Clean that up a bit. Do that. I suppose for good measure. Where's the middle gone? Why is it all the way down there? I don't know if it has any bearing on anything putting it in the middle. I just like putting it in the middle. Select the short range mode on the sensors. I do, Mad Dementia, yes. I remember watching that on TV when it happened. So this is going to be a difficult one to track. So we basically want to zoom out by a certain amount on the sensors, but we need to track what that amount is. So I guess we need on the sensors orders struct, we need to start adding some additional variables that are sensor specific, like current sensor range and target sensor range, so that we know whether or not this objective has been completed by comparing that against the ranges that we've selected. So I guess first and foremost we need to know which sensors page we are on. So that would be our sensors mode, and if we do a select on that, and I guess we also need range. So we've got GPS range, the long range, medium range, and short range. So those are our values. So I guess we can just do that. So we're just providing a single value based on whatever our sensor mode is. So that would be our starting range, and then we would multiply that by 1.05, and that would be our target range that we are looking to achieve based on the current sensor mode. Yeah, so it's easy to action as an NPC, because the NPC will action this immediately. As a player, though, players are more prone for touching stuff and getting sidetracked and clicking on other things. So if you change to a different sensor mode, now all of a sudden this might not be relevant anymore because you're now on a different sensor mode. So I guess I might make it so that if you change sensor mode, then maybe we just cancel this order because it's no longer relevant to the sensor mode that you're on. So let's say the captain says, like, show me the local systems. You're looking at the long range sensors. You can see all the targets, and the captain says, zoom in. So we'll keep that as 5% as a standard. That's like the plus button. I think I set that to 5%. So instead of doing that, instead of zooming in, you click medium range, basically disobeying orders. But now that order is no longer valid because you're on a different sensor mode. So I guess we just have to have the captain get annoyed that you didn't do what they asked. Yeah, auto cancel. Because obviously the next part of this is that on here, now that we've just updated this enum massively, we now need to create objective tracking for each and every single one of these possible orders that could be received. So the objective tracking for zoom out, increase range, part of that objective tracking can be to track which sensor mode it relates to, and if that sensor mode isn't the mode we're on, it can immediately just kill the order and say, actually that's irrelevant now, and get it off the system. Yes, Delta. So for known systems that are in the SQL database or the real world systems, then searching for those is easy because we can just look up that data from the SQL database. If it's something that's a procedural star system, then that's where we need to come up with the algorithm for converting the XYZ coordinates into a name, and then have that name be reverse engineeringable back to those coordinates. So we need some kind of hash that we can work backwards to generate coordinates from the text and have it be, vice versa, so it works in any direction in a way that isn't just like a mess of letters and numbers. But that doesn't necessarily matter in the long run, because we can always name sectors. There are only a couple of million sectors, and it sounds like a lot, but we've got 18 million stars held in a SQL database, and it takes a couple of milliseconds to search that for something. So we could technically have a database of sector names that are generated on a script somewhere. We could have a SQL database which basically takes the sector coordinates and applies a name to that, and then we can append a star system name on the back of that, so you can have actual human readable sector names with a mix of letter and numbers for the actual star within that sector. That might be the best visual way of doing it, but we'll see. We'll see how that actually turns out, and whether or not that's too much database lookups to be practical. We might get lucky and come up with an algorithm that is able to turn the XYZ into something that actually is readable, in which case that would be good. Although I'm not adverse to using the Stargate way of doing things. So like PZX234, something like that. It worked well for Stargate, and we could potentially do something similar. But rather than 2 sets of letters and numbers, we'd have 3. Yeah, and we maybe have to do some kind of pattern on that as well to make it maybe alphanumeric in the sense that it always starts with a couple of letters and always ends with a couple of digits, just for consistency's sake. But yeah, so yes is the answer. At some point we'll have that. Yeah, the NPCs, they do delay their actions. If they have a long sequence of things to perform, there's at least 1 second of delay between each action. So if they're doing 3 things, it will take at least 3 seconds. Good night, PSV. Have a good one. Right. Let's get myself up to speed of where I was again. So so this is the NPC logic for handling those things. This is the task management for creating those orders, And then of course we have the objective checking, which happens on here. Yeah, so objective tracking, objective raising, and objective actioning. So we need to make sure that, that, and that all have matching subgraphs with all the stuff in them that they need. I'll get them all raised first, and then we can work on actioning them. Okay, so let's add a couple of things to the struct. I think yeah, because when we go through and do all the actioning of these things, it's this orders struct that we are querying. So we need to make sure that it has everything on it that we need. So I think the sensor mode that this relates to, I think, is crucial. And then any ancillary stuff like this range value that we can plug into it. And we'll probably add a dozen or so different bits of criteria that we can check based on whatever the orders are. So let's find that. So bridge orders sensors. That's just the state of the order. That's our text. That's the order itself. Those are our IDs. So we just need sensor modes. Right, so that, keep that handy because I'll probably have to add a few things to that. Yes, so we can now set our sensor mode as part of this, and then we can set that directly from there. I might do that from here. Get rid of stuff we don't need. Save bloating it. So we'll do that on every single one. I suppose we will also, for good measure, yeah, so this one, actually, we won't set the mode from what it is currently. Obviously, this relates to what we want it to be. So we're setting it to GPS mode. So we are checking against whether or not that is set to the relevant mode. I mean, I say we could actually just do one single order, which is select sensor mode, and switch on this as a bit of optimization. But for now, we'll just we'll do one for each. So that one needs to be medium range, and that one needs to be short range. Yeah, so as we go through each of these, we will add to the struct as needed. So the other thing we needed on this one was our range value. Actually, I will do that, because if we're putting the range underneath, then I can just tidy that up thusly. So target range. Oh, and of course that needs to be a float. Okay, so basically when we do the objective checking for this, we can just see, like, is the sensor range bigger than the value that we have selected here? If so, then we have successfully completed this. And then for zooming in, we simply need to do that the other way around. So instead of timesing it by 0.05, we will times it by 0.95. So decrease the current sensor range by 5%. And it doesn't matter which page we're on because we're grabbing that from here anyway. I don't care about a target. Oh, and that needs to be zoom in. Okay, that's that one done. Hopefully we'll get through them quite quickly. Okay, so conduct a long-range survey. Right, so this one does need to care about the target. So conduct long-range survey. I might approach this in two different ways, but if we assume that this one is chosen from the main listing when you can only see stars, not the focus view. So perform long range survey. So we need a command target for this. So on here, just to double check. So conduct survey. If we don't have a valid target, we're not drawing that anyway. So we've already got some gatekeeping going on here. So we won't even give you the option on the menu if it's not valid. But just to like double check on that, we will make sure that we lock in with the target system. So if we get command target, where's my macro? There it is. So by giving it the target details that are set immediately when you press the button, that means when we're doing our objective tracking, it is expecting a long-range survey of this system specifically. So if you come at this order, say 10 minutes later, when the command target's changed, you might even be in a completely separate system, it will specifically wait for you to target this system. And then we can do that on here to make sure that we are being very specific with what we're asking. So perform a long-range survey of name at coords. So we can actually be very specific in this. So So what the what it'll show on the UI is the name of the target. So if that's a known star system like Barnard Star or Sirius, it will actually say perform a long-range survey of Sirius at the coordinates for Sirius. Just so that if you're a player looking at that, it's not a mystery as to what needs scanning. Plus, we'll have the button on there as well for targeting that system on the sensors. So assuming that you are within range of that system still, you can press the button on the actual objective, and it will target that system for you on the sensors. Okay, and this one is just for cancelling the survey. Cancel the active long range survey. This one's nice and straightforward. We don't need targets or any of that stuff. And again, so from objective tracking, if as soon as the long range survey is not running, then this will automatically get cleared off anyway. So if it completes, so if the survey completes before the player or NPC has a chance to action this order, then the order is cleared off the system anyway because it's no longer relevant. Okay, next. Focus on command target. Might rename that to command target actually. So focus on there is only one place you can do a focus, which is on the long range, so I'll just rename that for simplicity's sake. So focus on command target, so we need to get a command target, and again we've got gatekeeping on the radial menu, so you won't even get the option to select this if you don't have a command target, so we don't need to worry about double checking that at this point. We can just give it the command target that we know we've got, because if we didn't have it we wouldn't get this option anyway. Focus the long range sensors on do I add the target coordinates there? I just say given target for now, because there'll be a button you can press. But yeah, I might expand on this and flesh out the text and what's displayed on the UI. I think it will actually list the coordinates on there anyway. But okay, that should do that one. Hey, Bound by Strings, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. what I called this one. So, what was it? Return to long range overview. Let's just name that accordingly. Return to, to long range overview. I keep the naming consistent, and it just makes life a bit easier. So we don't need a target for that one. Display the long range sector overview, which is basically just pressing the back button. Okay. Next. Conduct long, medium range survey. Trying to keep the keep the naming convention the same so that I don't get too confused. So perform a medium range survey on the given target system. So this is a medium range one, and we'll need I guess that's actually always going to be the current system. We will store a reference to that anyway. Yeah, because we're in medium range, we're not on the long range orrery map. So the medium range orrery map and the long range orrery map are obviously treated separately. So yeah, so we're already on medium range mode. So it's always going to be the current system. So rather than that, we get ship state. Then what we'll do is we'll store the details for the current system that we're in. We won't. Well, actually, you might. Get sector location. Yeah, I'm going to have to do it this way because we don't have a quick way of grabbing the local system from player controller. Obviously, every time the ship enters a new system, we do generate that data. We're probably storing it on game state, actually. Actually, I'm going to get a proper reference to it. Okay, so get sector location. No, it's still going to be the same way. Alright, so what I might do is set this up on game state, so we have a queryable source for the current system that we're in. The sector location generator that generates the star systems is actually a blueprint component hanging off of game state anyway. Right now, at least. It's not going to be long term, but that's where it lives right now. So it is accessible through game state. So I can actually get the name, the radius properly, and all the rest of it. But for now, we'll just do it like this. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to populate any of that, but we only really need the galactic coordinates because we are raising an order to perform a medium range survey, and we're saying do it on the current system because we're already in medium range mode. So the only thing we need to track is what was the current system at the time when we raised the order, and that's what, going by where the ship currently is, that's the galactic coordinates of the system we were in when we raised the order. So really we only need to check against that. So when we do our objective tracking, we'll just say, are we in that system still, and is that system, or rather, if we look at the exploration data, the saved exploration data, we can take those galactic coordinates and then say, right, has this system been scanned to knowledge level 2? If it has, then we know that this has been done, and therefore we can close that order off. If the system had already been scanned to knowledge level 2, this would automatically just close anyway. Again, because we can check against the coordinates with our exploration data and get rid. So that should be that one sorted. And then we just want to cancel our medium range survey. Cancel medium range survey, cancel the active medium range survey. Again, we don't really need to care about checking anything because we're just looking to see if there's a scan running, and this task will close if there aren't any scans active at this precise moment in time. So that's an easy one as well. Okay, so we copy these. So perform short range scan, and then cancel short range scan. Do that one first because it's easy. Cancel the active short range scan. Short range. Simples, and then perform a short range scan on the target object. So this one does require a command target. Again, this option wouldn't even be presented on the menu if there wasn't already a command target, so we don't need to worry about checking it. But we will keep it there for checking purposes. Perform short range scan. So perform a short range scan on the target object. The target object will be stored as part of the task. So when it comes to checking it, we can check against that and work out, again, comparing with our exploration data, is this object in the exploration data scanned to knowledge level 3 or not? If it is, then this task gets cleared off. Okay, almost there. Oh wow, you're well far back, Delta. Yeah, we do actually have some red alert sounds, but we turned them off temporarily because they played continuously and started overlapping. So what we'll do is we'll have, when you set red alert, you'll have all the red lights flashing. You'll have the alert klaxon playing maybe 5 times, and then the alert klaxon will stop, but the lights will continue flashing red. Because what we don't want is for the alert klaxon to just go on and on and on forever whilst you're at red alert, because that will get annoying after a while. So we'll have it play a few times and then stop, but the lights will keep flashing. Display, what was I calling it? I think open surface map, I think I called it. Yeah, open surface map. Display the surface map of the target object. Display the surface map of the target object. Yeah. So short range. And we'll get our command target again. Because there will come a time when we have moons where there will be multiple things within range of the short range sensors. So you'll need to specifically target one of those things in range in order to perform a scan on it. Okay, so display the surface map of the target object. Okay, done. And then close surface map. Close the active surface map. No target required. Let's remember what I called this. Toggle surface map clouds. That's it. Toggle surface map clouds. Toggle. Yeah, I'm going to keep it as toggle rather than on or off. Toggle the cloud layer on the surface map. That one would be terminator. Toggle the terminator line on the surface map. Actually, let's call that toggle the day-night terminator on the surface map. And then, what did I call this one? I think I called it the full thing, didn't I? Tech signatures. Toggle displaying tech signatures on the surface map. Right, so after all of that, we have now defined the action IDs that are being passed from the radial menu. We have defined the enum that contains all the possible things that can be done on the sensors. We have created all of the code for raising tasks on the system. So all those should now be raisable as tasks. What is left to do is we have to add all of the logic for checking task completion. Now obviously, each one of these is going to have a different set of logic for working out whether or not that task has been completed or has become irrelevant for some reason. So all of those need doing. And then, I guess as a final step, we need to do the same or similar on the actual NPC, where we are showing the NPC how to actually complete each of these steps. So once that's done and that's done, then the NPC should be able to be robust and commandable, and not just the NPCs but also players as well, because obviously now that we've changed it so that the ability to raise a task for a particular bridge station is independent of who sat in the chair, it means that in a multiplayer environment we can now have one player as the captain, who could be raising tasks for players sat in those chairs, and those players can actually then complete those tasks without any verbal communication having taken place between the captain and the crew member. I know there's a lot of people who are quite shy and they don't want to talk to people, so that does make that possible now. And because those consoles obviously are also fully functional, if you have a group of players who are in voice chat, you can still issue a verbal command and they can still perform those actions without needing to raise tasks in the background, so that the tasks are purely optional for players depending on how those players are playing, but obviously crucial for NPCs because NPCs are thick. Okay, so we're beyond midnight, so I shall leave it there. But yeah, so after the stream, after I've had a snack and a cup of tea, I will continue fleshing out that, and when all that's done, I shall put this out as another build for you guys to test. I think we're back in a good place now where we can do regular builds again, because nothing's particularly broken, so we can just keep churning this out now. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. It's always appreciated, always good to have you along for the ride, and I shall see you on Sunday for more fun. And yeah, on Sunday, let's see whether or not we can get the sensors NPC to actually find something proactively. That could be quite a lot of fun. Right, have a good one all, and I shall see you on Sunday. Bye!